first step in transforming this stock Firebird is going to be ditching the suspension. Brett began by widening the rear wheelhouses to accommodate larger tires.
Basically, I just split that rear wheel tub and added in a 4-inch section of sheet metal. And then I put in a fuel-safe fuel cell in the car just to get it so I can both drag race and road race with the car.
Once the new steel was welded in, he smoothed the tubs with some Marson Marglass fiberglass reinforced filler. After some sanding, he covered the tubs with Herculiner pickup truck bed liner. The bed liner provides an extremely durable coating to protect the tubs from scratches, and it also looks like the stock undercoating. When completed, it's difficult to tell any work was performed, and the Herculiner will wear like iron. Then Brett moved to the front of the car to begin work on the front suspension.
So the first thing we did was we brought the car in, put it up on the rack, got it up to a comfortable level, zipped the wheel and tire off, and then took the brake line off to drain out the brake fluid, and then we took off the caliper. Even though the car had factory disc brakes on it, the car still didn't stop very well. We did some testing with it, and it was just garbage. So we're putting on the Baer complete brake set, front and rear.
The original disc brakes, backing plates, and sway bar end links all came off pretty easily. The shock absorbers were a completely different story.
The shock would not, obviously those all spin, so the shaft spins, and that top thread is, got crap from the road after so many years. So the nut wouldn't come off. So what I did was I just took a cut-off wheel, I cut the bottom of the shock, the two ears that come off the shock, cut those off and took a hammer and beat the shock up into the spring pocket. So obviously we're not going to reuse these, so it's pretty easy to just tear all this stuff out. Next we use the training jack. We put that underneath the lower control arm so we could start taking out the cotter pins and removing the spindle in order to drop that A-arm down without having the spring come screaming out of there. So we use the training jack as just an easy way to get that spring out. And working on cars, obviously there's going to be the carnage. So using the ball peen hammer, hitting the lower control arm, I actually took a little chunk of paint off the fender.
Cool. Little chip action. It's fixable.
All right, so once I used the ball peen hammer to get the lower control arm to get disconnected from the spindle, I just used a training jack and lowered the training jack slowly to where that spring just didn't come screaming out. We used a pickle fork to separate the spindle from the upper control arm. You definitely want to be careful, so I used the longest pry bar I could find so I could be out of the way in a hurry. So I used that just to get the spring out, and it ended up just kind of falling out. It wasn't dangerous at all. So removal of the lower control arm, there's just the two bolts there attached to the frame. Zip those out. Once everything was out, I went ahead and just cleaned everything up. It's just easier now that everything's out of the way. So unlike the other cars that you'll see on V8TV, this one wasn't a frame-off restore. I'm just gonna do some quick cleanup here, use some simple green degreaser, scrape that out, use a DA to clean it up. I had some chips over here on the wheel well, and then some rust on the frame, so I just DA'd that with some 80 grit and then shot it with some trim black.
After Brett disassembled, cleaned, and painted the front area, it was time to start installing the new high-performance suspension parts.
For the control arms, we went with Global West, and the uppers, they are a TIG constructed heavy wall tube, and it came complete with everything that you would need: the cotter pins, all the nuts, the actual bushings. So the bushings are a Dell aluminum. The Dell ran is kind of like a nylon. That's the white part. and then the blue anodized is obviously the aluminum. So with these bushings, these control arms will articulate smoothly without any binding.
Brett chose a QA1 Motorsports fully adjustable coil-over shock combination for the front with 450 pound-rate springs.
So it's kind of a compromise. I know a lot of the road race guys are going to say you need 600 or 700 pound springs in there, but this is kind of a compromise. I mean, it's the car has to do double duty, so that's what I chose, and we'll see how the car reacts.
The Global West tubular lower control arms are made from chrome moly steel, and they're TIG welded on a fixture, so they're very strong and very precise.
The really neat thing about the lower control arms is that it comes with an adjustable end link that has a heim. So it's a clean way to keep the sway bar tight.
Installing a coil-over shock system isn't necessarily complex, but sometimes it's also not very easy.
So the hang-up is that the spring would not fit inside the cup. So there's a cup at the top of the frame and the spring comes around it. And so these little teeth kept grabbing the spring and pushing it off to one side, and it wouldn't sit down in it.
Brett determined it would be easier to bolt the spring and shock assembly to the lower arm and then install it all as one system. Once the new upper and lower control arms were installed, Brett moved on to the new Baer brake setup, which came pre-packed with its own spindles.
All right, so the brakes in the front are from Baer. They come complete, and when I say complete, it comes with the spindle. They already have bearings in it, already have grease in them. It's a really nice piece. All you do is bolt the spindle in. You don't have to line up the brake to the caliper to the rotor. It's already done. It's complete. So you just bolt in the spindle and hook up the brake line and you're ready to go. The other thing on the car, we're gonna have a Hydro Boost, so the brakes are gonna be killer. The kit that Baer sends has a stainless steel brake line, and the importance there is with this rubber it would basically expand. So the stainless steel braided line keeps it very firm and gives us a lot of brake pedal. So the other cool part that we got from Baer are these tie rod ends.
The Baer billet aluminum tie rod ends are adjustable at their end length, and this allows them to compensate for geometry changes caused by lowering the front of the car. Sometimes you can get bump steer, which means the tires tend to steer towards each other, towards the middle of the car when the car goes over a bump. With the proper geometry, you eliminate this and the car tracks straight. A trick set of new wheels and tires was next for Project Splitter.
We're putting on the CCW wheels. They are an 18 by 9.5. We have 5 1/4 inch back spacing. And the Toyo Tires, they're RA1. This is kind of a road race. It's a sticky tire. It should grip a bunch. And these are a 275 series for the front. It's a huge tire in the front. It's a bunch of tire. We just finished up the front suspension, so we got a lot more to do on the car. So we're gonna move to the rear next, get the rear suspension done. We're gonna move on to the motor build. So we'll be down at Butler's filming. All you Pontiac guys out there, you know Butler Performance. So we're gonna be down there at his shop, looking at the motor that's going together for the car. When it's all finished, we're gonna take it to the drag strip. We're gonna take it to a road course. We're gonna beat on the car, see what it's capable of. We're gonna see if we can get an old Pontiac to perform.